Welcome to our 5 on 5. Pleased to be joined today by Ashland Democratic State Representative Pam Marsh. Good to see you. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's a short session beginning very early February, just a few weeks away. I wanted to bring you in and look ahead to everything that's going on. I guess before we get into the weeds, how short is a short session?
Well, it's precisely 35 days, although it can be actually shorter than that. This will actually be just the 5th short session that we've ever had in Oregon. Short sessions were approved by the voters back in 2011. Before that, we had in a 2-year cycle only one long session in the first year of the cycle, and then no formal gatherings of the legislature in the second year. So now we have short sessions, but they are limited to 35 days at maximum.
And how long are the regular sessions, just to give people context?
160 days.
Yeah, quite,
so,
5 times longer. Almost.
That's right. The long session in 2019 started in the end of January and went through to the beginning of July.
It was a very eventful session as well.
Truly.
What are you expecting? Cap and trade, is that at the top of Democrats' list?
Cap and trade is definitely an issue that's coming back. That was one of the big disappointments of the 2019 session, is that we were unable to pass any legislation significant to address climate. The Senate Republicans walked out of the building rather than considering legislation that had been passed pretty handily by the House. In short, what cap and trade does is to address the climate disruption that we are experiencing right now by putting a cap on greenhouse gas emissions, reducing that cap over a period of time to make sure that the state can actually get to our climate goals that were set way back in 2007. So we didn't pass the bill last year. Many of us have been working on it in the intervening months, trying to see if we can get to a version of the bill that will entice all of our colleagues to come in, look at it, and hopefully pass it.
Obviously, there's still a Democratic supermajority. As you said, it kind of went more smoothly in the House than in the Senate.
Yes.
Is there any reason to think that Republicans will be on board and maybe, or even walk out again, perhaps?
Well, from my point of view, when I came home from the session, I realized that we needed to go back to the basics. We need to talk about how climate change is really disrupting our Oregon landscape right now. We see that in the form of certainly the smoke and fire that we've experienced over the last few years, a unpredictable snowpack. Right now, the state, I just looked this up the other day, has 50% of the rainfall that we would normally expect at this time of the year. So we are experiencing climate change right now. It's not a theoretical, it's not something that's happening halfway around the globe. It's happening right here in Oregon. And further, good climate policy should give our communities the resources that we need to start to address the impacts that we're already seeing on climate change. So we've spent the last 5 months sort of going back and really talking about why we do this work and why it's important to Oregon communities. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to engage our colleagues on all sides of the aisle now in the conversation.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Ashland Democratic State Representative Pam Marsh. We ended part 1 on climate change. I did want to ask, activists say if something doesn't come out of this short session that they're going to put it on the ballot. Is that a good thing in your opinion?
Well, I think that's a backstop. I think the ideal is if the legislature can actually grapple with the issue and put together a proposal that has enough details so that we actually know how this policy is going to unroll. If the effort goes to the ballot, it will necessarily be in very broad language. The details of that will be filled in later on by policy staff or by work in the legislature. So it's not ideal, but I think it is a possibility for sure.
Republicans, as you know, were very frustrated, more so in the Senate last year than in the House. But Grants Pass Republican this week, Representative Carl Wilson, said this session will be another beatdown or attempted beatdown of Republicans. Do you expect to see, an easier time this year between the parties?
I hope that I think cap and trade is a critical issue for us to address in the short session, but I certainly would hope that it doesn't get in the way of a lot of other really important work that we have to do. For example, I am working and have been working for the past year on legislation that would expand rural telecommunications, specifically broadband. We know that we have many people, schools, libraries in our rural parts of our state that don't have any access to the internet. It's a terrific bill to work on with colleagues from all parts of the state because it's an issue that really affects all of us, particularly rural Oregonians. So that work is critical, and there are, a number of other issues, legislation that we'll see on smoke and fire that's particularly relevant to our region. Those efforts need to go forward, and I'm hoping that we'll have the collaboration that we need to work on much more in addition to cap and trade.
Okay, great to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.